Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul, and I am a nerd, and this is the February 2013 water cooler, which is our affectionate name for our Tabs3 PracticeMaster virtual user group. We are calling this the water cooler that almost wasn't today because it's about, 10:50, 11 o'clock this morning, Mary Jo. Leanne and Mary Jo looked at me and said, aren't we going to get ready for the water cooler? And I'm like, no, that's not till next time. Well, here we are. We made it. Thank God I have Mary Jo and Leanne to look out for me. And today we are talking about entering data. There are a lot of shortcuts and buttons and things that you have available to you on the data entry screens, the fees, cost, journal entries, GL journal entries, I should say, payments, invoices, a lot of neat little things you can do in there to speed things up, to help you find things, to help you understand or help make it a more streamlined experience. And so we're going to talk about those today. But before we do, I am going to show you this little representation of the GoToWebinar control panel, which should look kind of like what you have over on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, if you don't see this big part, it's because you already know enough to click this button here to get rid of the big part. This little button that looks like arrows pointing to the right will take this big part here and slide it out of the way so that it's not covering up your screen. Once you do that, and this button here will still be showing, this little part will still be showing, but this button will now look like arrows pointing to the left, and clicking it again will cause this to slide back into your screen in case you want to type a question here because you're feeling shy. If you're shy but you have a question, you can type it here, hit enter, and Leanne, our humble moderator, will read your question and present it to me or Mary Jo, whoever is appropriate to answer it, and she'll make sure you get your question answered. So if you have follow-up questions, just keep typing them till we're done, and then you can slide this back out of the way. Now, if you're not shy and you have a question, you can press this button here, which looks vaguely like a hand with an arrow pointing upward in front of it, which means you would be raising your hand. And when Leanne feels it's appropriate to interrupt us, she will do so, unmute you, let you answer your question, and then get you muted back up so you can continue eating lunch. So without any further ado, I am going to turn things over to Mary Jo, who is going to tell us about the data entry screen for payments. Mary Jo?
Okay, we're going to start in Tabs. That's the payment screen.
I will give Mary Jo keyboard and mouse, which she always has to remind me to do. There we go. You should be able to take control now, Mary Jo.
Okay, so when you're in the payment window, now I'm accessing it from Client Manager because I like Client Manager, but if you're in just the payment window when you're entering payments, I'm going to go over some of the little icons and buttons that are at the top of that screen and kind of explain some of these. So a lot of times I have clients that they're not aware of these, or maybe they're just not aware of all of them or what they do. So the first thing that we have when we come in is the detail and the rapid mode. Paul is going to go into a little bit more detail on this when he talks about fee entry. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I'm just going to show you that if I click on it, it gives me some different available information over here. If I go to the next one, I can toggle my list on and off, the list down at the bottom. So we can see whether or not, all these payments that we've entered. So I don't know if that just died. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. It sounded like my phone went dead, but apparently it's not. So hopefully we can still hear, and you're all with me. So anyway, this turns on and off the list view down below. A lot of times people don't also know that you can drag and drop this list and expand it to make it a little bit bigger, so you can see more of all the payments that you've entered. And this is in all of our screens that we're going to talk about today. Some will come in and they'll have this pulled all the way down to the bottom, and they won't be able to see that list even when they click on the list view. So you can come in and drag that up, and it should remember that for you the next time you come in. The other thing that we have up here at the top is select by statement number. And this is a little gem that's kind of hidden in here. We all get those checks that come in and you just don't know who the client is. They don't put a reference number on it. The only thing they write on there is the statement number. And you're trying to find out who this belongs to. And I see this a lot in like probate cases where the person paying the bill is, you know, the executor and not the actual name on the estate, and so they just write a statement number on and you're trying to match it up. Well, if you come in here, you don't even have to be in any particular client, but if you click on that, it'll open a little box for you to actually put in a statement number and search for it. Now, there is one little caveat here. If you're using the statement numbering on the client level, that doesn't really help too much because you may have, you know, 100 statement number ones or 1,000 or whatever, you know, because each client has its own unique statement number. But if you're using firm numbering, and every statement you send out has its own unique number regardless of matter or client, this is a great little tool to help you find who that check belongs to. So again, it's just the one up here with the little number 3 on it. Select by statement number, come into any client and click on it, and then you can just put in a statement number and let it search. The next one here is applying payment to multiple matters. This is another one that we just love, especially if you have a client that's sending you one check for several matters. When I worked at a law firm, we did landlord-tenant, and we would get a check for hundreds of matters all in one check. And at the time, I didn't know about this little button, so I was putting in those individual payments, which kind of, you know, is very time-consuming. So to use this button, you can see right now it's grayed out. So I'm just going to add a new payment. And what you do is you just come into any matter. It doesn't matter if it's the 00 matter, the first matter, the last matter, somewhere in the middle. As long as you're on a matter for that particular client, and you can come in and put it that whole check on that particular matter. It doesn't matter. Just pick one. Come in. Let's say we have a $1,000 payment, and I want to split this between several matters. Now, I don't know if this guy that I happen to pick has several matters, so it's probably not going to work here in the demo data, but you would pick any matter, and then as long as you put in the full amount of the check, go ahead and put in the check number, and then hit this little Apply to Multiple Matters button. And, of course, I don't have any matters greater than 0, but what it'll do is it'll go out and look and see if this $1,000 equals what was billed for that client. If it does, it will automatically go out and distribute that money to those matters and pay it. Now, what if it doesn't? Let's say that you billed a statement and it had $1,000 due, and then you build another statement and they still hadn't paid that first amount, so there was another $10,000 due. So the total amount due doesn't match what this check coming in is. Or maybe they just do a partial payment. That's the other thing that can happen. What you would do is just put in that amount, still hit your multiple matter button, and what it'll do is open a window that lists out all the matters and how much is due on each matter. And you can manually distribute each one of those checks. It'll allow you to do it proportionately, or you can pick and choose. You can tell it which one that you want. All of that is right in there under the multiple matters, so you can apply there. Are you going to look for one that has, Paul took my controller away. I don't know if we have any in our actual demo data. It'll have to be somebody that has something due and has multiple matters with something due. Try her. Okay. Okay, I got it. Give me my controller back, Paul. All right, so let's try her. And I'm going to put in more than what to do, just so that I know that, you know, because I know this one has 150, the others probably have other amounts due. And so if I hit this, there, it's giving me that window because my amount is different than what is due. And so this window right here is where I can see how much is due on each one of our matters. I can just click on this one. If I double click it, it brings that client ID. I can't double click, Paul, you'll have to do that. If you double click on Kelly White, it puts up the 850 matter, and I can tell it, yes, pay the whole 150 on this matter, save my record, and it keeps track. And it also keeps track of how much remaining I have left to distribute, which is really helpful. And then if I double click on the 850.01 matter, it will then put that up in there so I can distribute to this one. And I can say how much I want on that one, and you would have a list of however many you want. Now, most of the time, if it's just something that you build and it's the same amount and you just come in and do it, it's just going to apply it, and you don't have to do all of this. But on those instances where it is different, it gives you the option to tell it, so it's not going to assume anything. So I'm going to cancel out of that. The last icon up here at the top is the GLS integration icon. So if you have our General Ledger module and you're having payments go over to General Ledger, you can click on this and it will actually show you how that payment is going to be distributed. So I'm going to come into this. Can you bring up that $125 matter? Our GoToAssist doesn't let us double click, so I'm kind of stuck. But if I come in here, I can see the general. This looks just like the journal window in General Ledger. Now, apparently, this payment, when it was put in, wasn't integrating with General Ledger. But if it were, it would show me how that had applied. It would show me that it hit my bank account and that it had the fee income or cost income or whatever accounts were in there. And if I don't see any information, I could enter it right here from Tabs without having to go to GL. So I can create this journal entry to distribute that payment how I want right here. So that's convenient as well. And then the last button that I want to show you in payments, let me get out of here. Now it's probably going to lock me in here. Let me cancel this. Can you get me out of there, Paul? It's not letting me exit. Just say okay. There we go. Okay. So the last button I want to talk about has to do with allocation. We told you that there's a way to see how something is allocating, and what we mean by that is which attorneys is it giving the credit to, which statements is it applying to, that kind of thing. And so we have this little button here that has like a little dollar on top of it, and if you click on that while you're in a payment, you can come in and see how it's going to want to actually allocate it. Now, up at the top, you've got a little AR summary for the allocation, and I could just see how the fees are going to break down by attorney. So this one only has one attorney that's worked on the case, so it's going to want to put $125 on that particular timekeeper, or advances, you know, how much is due in advances and what do I want to apply to it. So this top part is just a basic summary of what it's going to do. Down here is how it's breaking it down by each statement. So sometimes you may have multiple statements over here, and you can see, well, it wants to, you know, do we want to put $125 on, you know, this particular statement? There's only one in my case, so it's going to automatically, you know, populate those. Same thing with advances. It'll try to break out that payment of what's due and apply it. And I can see how it's been done, and I can even change those allocations if I want to. And if you're using fee compensation rules, it'll also show you how that's breaking down for the fee compensation. So it's just a helpful little tool. Most of this is done automatically. It's not too often that you need to go in to change these allocations, but if you get some firms do have some very detailed ways that they have to make sure that it's allocated for compensation purposes. So this is something that if you want to verify, it is there. And we're not going to spend a ton of time on that because I'm going to turn this over to Paul to talk about fees, unless there's questions.
Okay, well, I'll talk about fees, and we'll let Leanne check and see if there's any questions. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this payment allocation screen and out of this payment screen, and we're going to go in and we're going to look at a fee. Now, when you're adding a fee or editing a fee, we're going to go into New, and we have the same buttons here as far as allowing us to see this list. So we can toggle the list on and off. And again, as Mary Jo pointed out, we can use the crosshairs to move that list up and down. And yes, you do want to make sure that it's big enough to show you everything you'd want to see, but small enough that it doesn't cover up all of your description here. Now, again, we have these buttons here, and these are available in all the lists. And we have one that allows you to determine what you're looking at, and that's the one with I believe that's a pair of binoculars. I can't see. I'm very old and can no longer see my screen, but we're going to say that's a pair of binoculars there that lets you zero in on what your view is. And so you're determining whether you're looking at these by client ID. In other words, we're entering something for Kelly White's divorce, so we're looking at all the other time that's in there for Kelly White's divorce. Or by transaction date. That means that if you have an attorney that's entering his or her own fees, they may want to see it by transaction date because they want to see everything they've logged so far that day And different people have different desires as to what they see, or by entry date. Now this is especially helpful for somebody who's entering somebody else's time, and that time may spread over a multiple number of days, but they still want to see everything they've entered themselves that day. So it's based on entry date as opposed to transaction date. Something new that I don't know how new it is, but something I didn't even know was in here, is that you can include the archived records when you're doing it by client ID, and you can actually see, well, actually by anything, and you can actually see archived transactions in this list in addition to those that are sitting out there in WIP. I think that's very cool. I didn't know that was there. And then you can also determine which timekeepers to include and which user IDs to include as far as who entered it or who the time was for. So very cool that you can do that. And again, of course, you can turn it off if you don't like it. And one other thing that's also very neat is you can print it. So whatever you've got on that list, if it's all the time that you've entered so far that day, or all the time that you've entered so far for that particular client or matter, you can then hit this print button and either preview. Of course, you don't want to preview. You want to, if you're doing this, it's because you want to print it out and take it somewhere or show it to somebody. And so there's that button too. So you've got the change your view button, and you've got the print button. You've got the ability to turn this on and off. And of course, when it's on, you can determine how big it is. Now, another thing about this screen here is this rapid and detail. And I think Mary Jo mentioned this, but what it does is it shows you the fields you have to enter versus all the fields. So for instance, in fee entry, when we're in rapid view, we're only seeing hours worked. How much time did you spend? We don't care about rate, because rate should already be set appropriately for that matter, for that client, for that particular timekeeper. We don't really care so much about amount, because although it's nice to see that your 2 hours amount to $500, it's not part of time entry. What's most important is that you get the hours in, the date, and what it is that you're billing for. Then when you go into that detail view, you do see all these things. And you see other things like category and bill code, whether it's billable or non-billable, whether it's printable or non-printable, what rate codes are being used, whether it's being held or printed, whether it's taxable or not. These are not things that people really care about seeing on their screen when they're entering time. However, when the person who actually prepares the bills needs to go in and make something non-billable, or to hold it, keep it from appearing on the next statement, these fields are appropriate. So detail view is usually for the person who's doing the billing, and rapid view is usually for the person who's entering the time, especially if it's their time, because usually they just care about getting that time in there and not about a bunch of different things. Now, in addition, there is a timer that is built into the fee entry screen. There are a lot of different ways to enter fees if you have PracticeMaster, and there's another timer that appears in PracticeMaster. But if you're entering time straight from Tabs, you can time that transaction. For instance, I could get this timer started because Kelly White just called me and I'm talking to her on the phone right now. I can minimize this. I can look up whatever she's asking me a question about, and when I come back in and hit this button here, it will add that amount and round up, because we bill by the 10th of an hour. At least that's the way this demo system's set up. And so you can actually even time your entries as they are being performed using this timer function. And then one more thing that I think is the coolest thing in the world when it comes to an attorney entering his or her own time is the recap of hours button. This is the I'm halfway through my day, how many billable hours have I entered button. And obviously in my demo system here, I haven't entered very many billable hours. Now, please understand that our demo system lives on November 15th of 2011. And so that's why it thinks that today is November 15th of 2011. You can move from day to day and see how many billable and non-billable hours you have on each of those days. And if you get in here and you say, well, wait a minute, I've been here, it's noon, and I've been here since 8, why do I only have 1.05 billable hours and no non-billable? You can double-click on the date, and it'll actually show you what you do have in here. And you'd look at that and say, oh, I forgot to make the entry for the 2 hours I spent at the pretrial this morning. So this is very, very helpful, especially for those attorneys that are entering their own time, to help them keep on track throughout the day and make sure they've gotten everything in there that they're supposed to be getting in there. And now I'm going to turn this back to Mary Jo, and she's going to talk about the AP invoice data entry screen.
Okay, we're going to head over to AP. And in AP, when we are getting ready to do a check, we also have, again, some buttons up here at the top. And again, that detail rapid view, if we want to get rid of some of that stuff at the bottom that we don't need to see here, we just want to get a check in with just the amount and the description and what bank account I need to do. I can do that, or with the other additional information, we can put that in there. Now, a lot of times, we don't need to hold any of these. We're just going to put our invoices in. We don't use the discounts. The due date is the same as the invoice date, whatever. These, you just might not need these. So that detail and rapid mode is handy for that. The basic information to get an invoice in is just who it's to, the amount, you can put your invoice number, all that, and what bank, and a description. Just cleans up the screen a little bit. You still have your list. Again, we've got that toggle switch up here if we want to toggle that list on and off. Same thing there. Same thing when we go over here to the options. We can order it by vendor, invoice, check date, or entry date, also by who entered the actual invoice. And say OK. We also have the print feature, so if you want to print all the invoices or checks that you've done for this particular vendor, you can do that and print the list. So that's up here. Something that is new, if we do a new check, or actually I don't even need to do a new check, but if we have an invoice in here that needs to be printed, let me, Paul, can you double click on that for me? Maybe I should have done a new one. I'd have my double click. So say no to that. Okay, so if I just want to quick print a check, I just have an invoice, I just need to get a check out, an attorney's ready to go to court, he just comes in, he needs a check, he's on the way. I don't want to have to go out and hit print checks and scroll through whichever ones I want to print. I just want to hurry up and print this. We do have the quick print feature, so once that check is in there, it's an invoice. You do have to save it first, so you have to get out to General Ledger, pick your information, save it, come back in, and then you can double click it, bring it back up, and you can hit this quick print, and it will go ahead and print that check for you. So that's done. It gives it the check number. That one's out of the way. The other one next to that is the Tabs3 cost. A lot of times if you're integrating with Tabs, you do the check, it's a court cost, you go put it on the client's bill, and then you find out that it was the wrong amount, or you have to change it, or maybe you put it under the wrong client. Whatever that happens to be, and you have to go in and modify that information that was on that bill to that client. You can just click right here on this Tabs3 cost. As long as you have that invoice up here on the screen, I can click on the cost window, bring up that information, and in this case I can see that $100 filing fee was put onto Michael Larson. And if it was the wrong one, I can double click this. Well, Paul can double click this. Wake up, Paul. There we go. And I can bring it up here, and I could change who that client was. I could change the amount. Maybe only $50 went to Michael Larson and $50 went to someone else. This is also a great window or icon button when you forget. You put in $50 to one and you exit, and then you can't get back into that window, and you're like, oh no, I had $50 more to distribute. Well, you can go back in and you can just hit that button, and you can just distribute the rest of that money that you had to for that particular check. Paul?
Hold on, Mary Jo.
Oh, I'm sorry, question?
I think I have a question here. Mary wants, she missed which button was for the recap.
In fees? All right, we'll go back. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I'll unmute myself, and I'll take you back to fees and show you that when you're in the fee screen, the recap is the one with the calendar with the little clock in front of it. Right there takes you to recap, and from there you can move from, it'll default to today or whatever you're adding time for at that moment. You can move around, double click, and see what you're doing there.
I'm just going to add on here real quick for you, Paul. That window, in case anybody's wondering, you can't print from that window. So if you want to print that recap of hours, that's actually the recap of hours report,
yep.
And it will print those same things, but it's a report that you need to go to, and Paul's navigating out to show you. I think it's on the main screen, too. I don't know if it's this one.
Yep,
it's
there
right
it
there
is.
on the main screen. And so if you want to actually print that list that you're seeing from the recap of hours, you can come in and give it a date range for a certain timekeeper, and you can print it from there. But that other one is just a quick view. A lot of times if you're running time for somebody else, you want to double check and make sure you got it all in. That's a quick view, but this is where you'd actually print that out.
And not only that, you can print it But when you're in the preview mode, you can still drill down just like you did in that other screen. It's a little organized a little differently, but you do get the weekly subtotals and the billable and non-billable grand totals also, which is very, very cool. I know a lot of firms religiously print these and use them as a management tool or as a timekeeper review tool. It's probably one of the more popular reports to print.
And taking that just one step further, that report will print the calendar, but it still doesn't print all those detailed entries. So if you want that, that's a transaction file list. So those are all things for another topic, but just so that you know, if somebody, we always get that question if you can print that. So Paul's going to talk about cost.
You're sounding like my mother, Mary Jo. She could start telling one thing, and 30 minutes later, she wouldn't have finished the one thing, but she would have told you 17 other stories in between. Not that I didn't inherit that quality also. Now I'm going to take you back into the Client Manager because, as most of you know, Mary Jo and I love to live in the Client Manager, and we're going to look at a cost screen. Now, the cost screen is very much like the fee screen as far as what you've got going down here with the list being able to toggle on and off. Of course, there's no recap of hours button in the cost screen because it's not an hour-based screen. We have the detail rapid, again, exposing the same sorts of fields, billable, non-billable, printable, non-printable, printer hold as far as that goes. We do have this other button here. This is probably the only thing new. It's the GL integration button. Now, first I'm going to press it, and I'm going to say yes. I want to say, well, actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to toggle my list, and I'm going to pick another transaction. There we go, a real one, not a one that hadn't really been entered all the way. We also have this ability here with this particular screen, the cost screen, to select which date you're looking at in the list, which is again kind of cool, but it's specific to the cost screen. I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to click this button, and it's going to tell me that GL information for cost entries entered using APS cannot be edited in tabs. So I'm going to back off and explain something. When you write a check to the clerk of courts for $100 for a filing fee, you do that in accounts payable, and so it is through accounts payable that you therefore make the integration to the general ledger and the integration to put that on the client's bill to bill the client for that filing fee. Therefore, you do not get to the GL entries for that cost transaction from the cost screen. You get there from the AP screen. Now, that said, some firms also integrate their costs from billing so that the minute they're billed, they then kind of will suspend into perhaps a balance sheet account that then when the payment is entered, it reflects against. Most of our firms do not do this. Most of our firms that we work with do not integrate with general ledger from the cost entries in billing. That all takes place, that integration, through accounts payable. So if you're looking for this button to get you to the general ledger information for this cost, it is probably not the right button to be using. You probably want to go back to the accounts payable entry, the invoice entry, to see that. With that said, I'm going to close this window up and turn it back over to Mary Jo for the last thing, which is general ledger journal.
Okay, general ledger. Well, there we go. I've actually got a general ledger journal window open. So I'm in here for this particular fee entry. And again, same thing. We've got that detail rapid mode, just taking off some of that information down there at the bottom about who the user ID and the date it was entered. List toggle on and off. But down here, a lot of times this is helpful in this window because you want to print this information out. How many times do you go out there and put in your payroll entries and then next month or next in 2 weeks or whatever have to remember all of those entries that you put in for that particular disbursement of all those taxes and where you posted. I made a little cheat sheet, I can remember it, and try to remember which was a credit, which was a debit for each one of those. But if you have one that you've already entered, it's great because you can just print your list here and print that out so that then you can have that for the next time you enter it in. You can also come in here and you can sort this list. Batch numbers are really important when you're doing journal entries to tie a journal entry together. You can see there's a little column here that has this batch number is 820. And if I have to make any additions or changes to this journal entry, maybe I have to disperse this out, and I realize that this 5150 is part client cost, but then it's also something else, and I have to add to this and change those amounts. If you don't use that same batch number, you end up with a lone journal entry all on its own, and this one doesn't work because it's out of balance, and then you're trapped in there because you can't get out because it's not in balance. So there's all these things that can happen. But that batch number, if you're sorting by that, this list gives you that option to say, okay, well, here's everything that's in that batch. So you can see all the entries that are tied to this specific journal entry. You can also do it by transaction date, and you can put in a date, and it will go in and show you all of the journal entries that have happened on that transaction date. You can come in and do it by entry date or by the current session. When you get that error that says your current session balance doesn't balance, it's not that your journal entry doesn't balance. It's that the session that you just did doesn't balance, and so it gets you trapped in there if you've got that turned on to warn you and not let you have unbalanced entries. It's not that the entries there, it's the session. So you can actually see your current session and see if that's what it is, you're out of balance there for that. I prefer to see it by batch number, but again, that's just a user preference. You can include different user IDs if you want to see who did what entries. You can come in and see that. And then the source for all, if you do the drop down, you can see the billing, the manual, where it came from. Where did these journal entries come from? I just want to see all the billing entries, and then I could sort that. Or I want to see all of the ones that I entered manually and see all my journal notes. So this is really helpful too. You can also see this on the general ledger report. If you include the source, it'll tell you where it came from. So that's available, but here is a good place to sort as well. Any questions?
I'm going to add something and ask you to explain it, Mary Jo. When you're pulling up an existing cost, it's easy. You're pulling it up based on the client. When you're pulling up an existing fee entry, you're doing it based on the client, or should I say the matter. This button right here takes us into the record where we can select which record we're looking for. Now, what's really cool in here, Mary Jo, show them how you can sort on date or amount and then just start typing the amount that you're looking for.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite places. If I'm trying to find a journal entry quickly, you can do a journal report and you can do, date ranges and all this, but I just come into a journal window, click on that little drop down, it opens this list, and if I'm looking for an entry for $150, I can come in and sort by that amount column, and I can just start typing 150, and it's going to take me to all the entries that are $150. So I can quickly find which one I'm looking for. Now, sometimes it's a common number, so it doesn't help as much as you want, but you can also sort it by date. When you come in here, it will show you the most current entry that you've put in, whether it was from Tabs, whether it was from a manual entry, AP, whatever the last journal entry that you did, it's automatically set to show it right on top. So if you make a mistake or you want to double check something that you just did, if you come in here and do that drop down, that amount and that entry will be right here at the top for you to double click on it and go fix it or delete it or whatever it was that you have to do. So that you can sort by that. If you know who you made it out to, you can do it by or in the description. You can do that. If you know which account number, any of these columns can be sorted on and found, and you can go in and make changes.
Now, one thing I find, Mary Jo, is that you'll get in here and you'll say, oh, there's what I'm looking for, 5873 or 58873.5, but you're not seeing the whole thing. You're only seeing that. So if you double click on it, then it brings up all the transactions related based on batch number, and now you can see, well, that is if you've got it set by batch number. There we go. And now you can see everything, both sides, all the different transactions that go together to make that. So if you're sorting by something funky like number or amount, and you find what you want, but then you're not seeing everything else that's around it, just double-click it, pull it up into this window, make sure you're looking at this by batch number, and you'll see all the rest of that transaction. So, Leanne, did we get any more questions?
No more questions.
After we went off on our tangents?
No, no more questions.
Okay. Well, Leanne, do we know what our topics are for next time? I'm putting her on the spot. I love doing this. It's Leanne's birthday, by the way. Everybody, let's all wish Leanne a happy birthday. Oh, I can hear it. There was Mary. Yep. There's Cindy. They're all wishing you a happy birthday, Leanne.
Thank you, everyone.
She's 27 years old today. Don't laugh so hard, Mary Jo. You'll give it away. Okay. Did we find out what those topics were, Leanne?
No, we didn't.
We didn't? Oh, that's too bad.
It's going to be a surprise.
I guess you'll just have to wait for that email that Leanne sends on the Thursday before the water cooler. So everybody have a good rest of the day and a good rest of the month, which isn't really all that much. And we will see you at the end of March with our next water cooler virtual user group meeting. Thanks much. Have a good day.